Hello my friends, I'm in the Roman medullas, where Romans dig the mountain in search for gold. An amazing place. And let me tell you something, El Bierzo is different. The climate is different, the soil is different, the grapes are different, the wines are different. Perhaps there is no better way to describe this region than remarking the differences from its neighbors. At the crossroad between the extremely humid and mountainous autonomous community of Galicia and the extreme continental nature of the flat Spanish Meseta Central, the denomination of origin Bierzo benefits from the best of both worlds when it comes to producing wines of distinction. An area of outstanding landscapes with clear evidence of the different civilizations established in this area over the centuries, El Bierzo leaves no peregrine unmoved in their path through the Santiago Way towards the city of Santiago de Compostela in Galicia. And with grapes that you may hear here for the first time, Mencía, Alicante Boucher, Godello or Doña Blanca. Come with us to discover the amazing wines produced in Bierzo. You won't be disappointed. The DO Bierzo is located in the northwest of the province of León, in the Castile and León region in Spain. Bierzo DO covers about 3,000 square kilometers. It borders the provinces of Orense, Lugo, and Asturias. The DO covers 23 municipalities, including the largest town of the area, Ponferrada. The area contains numerous small valleys divided into two main zones, Alto Bierzo in the most mountainous part, and Bajo Bierzo in a wide, flat plain. We are in the Castro de la Ventosa, a beautiful elevation first inhabited by Celtic tribes and later called Castro Vergidon by the Romans, which means beautiful view. Not surprisingly, as the whole Bierzo Valley can be seen from here. The towns of Pieros and Cacabelos are behind me. The Romans were who introduced modern agricultural practices in the area, including crops of Vitis vinifera vines. As in most of Spain, particularly in the north, viticulture expanded with the increase of monastical orders in the peninsula. The Cistercian order during the Middle Ages was the main driver of wine production in Bierzo. As in most parts of Europe, phylloxera devastated the vineyards of Bierzo in the late 19th century, which originated a severe economic crisis, forcing a huge number of people to migrate to the cities. area was not recognized officially as a protected denomination of origin until 1989. Now, this area is becoming a reference point for the production of very distinctive, unique wines from grapes like Mencia that have become representative of the area. I'm here with Adelino Perez, who is the president of the Regulatory Council of Bierzo, the denomination of origin.
Adelino, thanks for receiving us.
Thank you.
This is our first interview in the area. I wanted to place the viewer in the context of the history of the region when it comes down to wine elaboration, which originated in Roman times. Indeed, you have the medullas here, a Roman gold mine. Romans came with the wine and the Vitis vinifera vines with them. Can you tell me how things evolved from there?
Yes, the Romans brought the plants. They brought the vines and planted them in Bierzo. It all started back then. After the Romans, we moved to the monks in a number of monasteries in the area. 14 or 15 monasteries approximately. In the end, it's the monks who improved the elaboration of wine and who started making Bierzo known by its wines.
Back then, the grapes were already the ones used today, particularly Mencia, right?
Yes, correct. Indeed, we continue studying the autochthonous grapes in the area that have been produced and vinified here through history. The queen of Bierzo, when talking about varieties, is Mencia, and for the whites, it's Godello. But slowly, we are evolving. Actually, last year we included in the DO regulation new varieties that we have always had in Bierzo, such as Esteladinha and Merenthal. These are two varieties that have always been here and that we are now learning their vinification potential as Bierzo monovarietal.
After the monks, or perhaps at the same time, this zone has been characterized by the fact that almost every family has a little vineyard. Parcellization occurs into very small plots, and each family made its own wine, right?
Yes, after the monks, people made their own wines. Eventually, they grouped together, and in Bierzo, we even had 5 cooperatives. Currently, 2 of them continue in the denomination of origin, as you said. Here in Bierzo, there are many home wineries that elaborate wine for home consumption. But we have learned with time that our wines present properties that are good for the market, which has given us a plus.
The formation of the DO was in 1989, right?
Yes, in 1988 to 1989, around 12-13 winemakers joined efforts together with the cooperatives that I mentioned before, which had already grouped together many viticulturalists. They all got together to form the Regulatory Council. They realized that there was already a demand for Bierzo wines. They wanted to regulate the business. They wanted to produce bottled wines of equality and that were certified by the denomination by its Regulatory Council.
How many wineries do you have now?
We currently have 74 wineries, and we have around 1,200 viticulturalists within the denomination of origin. We have around 2,400 hectares of vineyards registered.
Most recently, after the creation of the denomination, there has been a boom. I don't know if in production, but clearly in external recognition.
I believe that we have been doing things well in Bierzo for some time, and we have very recognized people. For example, Raul Perez, viticulturalist and enologist, has been named Best Enologist in the world for several years in a row. Also, large winery groups from Rioja and Ribera and other places in Spain have identified Bierzo with great potential for the vinification of Mencia, Godello, and the other varieties that we have that are very important for the markets. We modified our regulation 2 years ago in view of defining the classification of our wines. Obviously, we maintain the generic wines of the denomination, where you can use grapes from everywhere in the delimited area, from all the municipalities of Bierzo. Then we have a new classification of Vino de Via, by which the wines are named according to the village where they come from and its geoclimatic characteristics. Then we have a higher classification that is more concentrated, that is Vino de Paraje, where we select areas within a village that are more specific. We already have very important parajes, like for example Rapolao, where different viticulturists are elaborating from grapes of these special locations.
Do you have any higher classification?
Yes, the highest one is Vino de Viña. Therefore we have Vino de Via, Vino de Paraje, Vino de Viña, and Vino de Viña Clasificada. As we move up the ladder, the requirements are stricter at the level of viticulture processes. El Bierzo is an area that proportionally has the largest coverage of old vineyards in the world. We know that those very old vineyards with such small production make very elegant and fine wines.
More concentrated. Talking about grapes here. Mencía for the reds and Godello for the whites are the queens. But you have others.
Within our regulation, to elaborate either blended or varietal wines, Mencía is the best known. It's the queen of Bierzo.
Excuse me, Mencía is sometimes compared with Pinot Noir, right?
In some circles, it is said that Bierzo is the little Burgundy. And they also compare us with respect to these varieties. We also have other red varieties like Garnacha Tintorera or Alicante Boucher, and then the two that I told you about before that have been recently included as they have always been in Bierzo, which are the Merenzau and Esteladinha.
Are these red?
Yes, red. Then within the white grapes, the most recognized is Godello. But there are many starting to make wines out of Palomino and Malvasia that are very interesting.
And Doña Blanca?
Yes, Doña Blanca or Valenciana is also a popular variety.
Alright, Adelino, thank you very much for receiving us and explaining all this. Now we're going to see the medullas.
Fantastic. Thanks.
I am in Canedo to discuss the climate and the soils of the denomination of origin Bierzo. As I mentioned before, Bierzo wines are different because its climate and geology are different. Have a look. Bierzo Dio has a microclimate very beneficial for viticulture that originates from several climatologic influences and its unique orography. It mixes the maritime climate of Galicia, characteristic of the famous Dio Rías Baixas in regards of humidity and rainfall, with the hot, dry continental climate of the Castilian Meseta Central, characteristic of Dios like Toro or Ribera del Duero, to name a couple. The Sierra de los Ancares protects Bierzo from the worst of the storms originated by the Atlantic Ocean, while still allowing its influence in the territory. The result is a microclimate particularly suitable for vine growing and quite unique in the Iberian Peninsula. This climate, warmer than in neighboring areas to the east, leads to early harvesting, usually a month ahead of the rest of Castile and Leon. Its highest humidity, due to higher rainfall levels over 700 millimeters, forces viticulturists to pay more attention to preventing fungal diseases. I'm here in Canedo, in the denomination of origin Bierzo, with José Manuel Ferreira, who is enologist of the Bodegas Prada a Tope.
Jose, thanks for receiving us.
Thank you for being here.
I'm going to ask you about the climate of Bierzo, which is like talking about a location defined by the valley of Bierzo.
Bierzo is a region located in the northwest of Spain and is characterized by its peculiar location that makes it the entry door to Galicia. It is clearly close to Galicia, but it's also influenced by the Meseta. This geographic location translates into climatologic influence from the two sides. The Atlantic from one side and the continental from the other. Here we have a particular situation with more than 2,000 hours of sunlight, but with a substantial rainfall level, often above 700 millimeters per annum.
We are now in Pieros, in the denomination of origin Bierzo. I'm with Sandra Amigo, who is the enologist of Bodegas Godelia.
Hi Sandra, glad to be here.
Glad to meet you, Enrique.
Tell me about the climate of this area.
We have influence from Castile and Leon, with heat and hot summers, but we also get the currents from the Atlantic Ocean that influence our varieties, Murcia and Godella, substantially. This climate brings mild winters and summers that can be hot in July and August. But overall, we enjoy very smooth temperatures. However, we have noticed most recently that rainfall is getting scarce. Shorter rainy periods than ever before.
Due to climate change.
Because of the climate change, we're becoming drier and drier, more similar to Castile and Leon than to Galicia.
Do Mencia and Godello, which are the main grapes, suffer from lack of water? Do they need rain and humidity?
They need a reserve of water during the whole year to reach September, with a high quality maturation. And sometimes it rains in September, which is not beneficial.
It is too close to harvest. Probably much earlier than in the rest of Castilla, right?
Yes, much earlier.
Beginning of September?
We start harvesting at the end of August. This has changed substantially. In the past, harvest used to be in mid-October, by the El Pila holiday on October 12th. And now we start harvesting at the end of August, some varieties, and at the beginning of September, the rest.
I'm in Villafranca del Bierzo, and I'm with Nacho León, who is the owner of Bodegas de Mencia.
Hi Nacho, how are you?
Very well, hello.
Before discussing viticulture, I'd like to talk about the climate of this area. We are at the crossroads between Galicia and the rest of Castile and Leon, which is a continental climate. This is a transition zone that perhaps makes the area unique.
That's right. Actually, we could talk about the Bierzo microclimate, which does not really exist though. But it is a microclimate of fusion. Indeed, we have some years that are more continental, some of them with Mediterranean notes, as well as clearly Atlantic years. Our winters are not as harsh as in Castile, and our summers are not as hot as those of Astorga or Leon. What governs the climate here are the mountain canyons, in other words, the Atlantic influence that comes funneled by the River Sil Valley.
The landscape of Bierzo reflects the transition from the flat Spanish meseta to the east and the mountainous orography of Galicia. Beautiful valleys unfold leading to rolling hills covered with vibrant green vineyards of various slopes and aspects. Alluvial soils dominate in the lower areas in the plain, while higher soils in the steep rocky slopes consist of a mixture of quartz and slate with a high minerality content. This humid, dark soil is slightly acidic and, as expected in humid zones, low in carbonates. I am in Villafranca del Bierzo. I'm with Guillermo Tenoira, who is the owner of Bodegas Tenoira. I'm in one of his vineyards.
Hello Guillermo, glad to be here. Thanks for receiving us.
Thanks for visiting, Enrique.
This area starts being mountainous. The vineyards are in all kinds of slopes, as we can see behind us. So really more difficult to work.
In the end, the orography makes this landscape very beautiful. But It also adds difficulty when it comes to proceed with the viticultural tasks. You also have this change orientations, with hills facing west, south, north. This, together with the soils, is what differentiates each of the zones within Bierzo. Bierzo is not a homogeneous place.
Probably those hills facing south or southeast get more heat and produce grapes with more structure, more powerful wines than those coming from hills facing north.
That's right. However, with the climate change and the seasons that we are experiencing, you may think a south-facing hill is best. But it turns out that since the year has been drier, the north-facing hill is actually better. There is a complex roulette of landscapes in Bierzo that makes possible this unique differentiation. We need to remember that Bierzo was a big lake. The orography is a direct result from it. The water currents move the soils in the bottom from one place to another. However, it happened. That's why you can find lots of clay right over there, and way less over here.
Is this a better soil for Mencia?
Yes, I prefer the clay with rolling stones for the Mencia and for the Godello. Well, over there we have two grapes, Mencia and Godello, but it's a cleaner area with just clay.
I work in all my vineyards in Villafranca del Bierzo. These are very Bierzo vineyards. Often the soil in Bierzo differentiates clearly, with the higher places containing loose slate, and in the lower places the soils are mainly clay and more acidic. This is common to all the northwest of Spain, but particularly true in Bierzo. This is very important. However, I have two terrains that are not typical of Bierzo. This vineyard, which is called Coteo because the mountain is called Coteo, possesses a calcareous soil. It has other components and is a shallow soil, but has limestone in the subsoil. It probably came from the north when it formed. And I also work in Valtuí de Abajo, which is right there in front of us, where I have a terrain in the Paraje Villejas, probably the most valued paraje, recognized for the elaboration of wines for crianza in Bierzo, where the soil is sandy. But in general, we can conclude that the DNA of the Bierzo soils is clay and acid.
All these terrains have an inclination that is a little scary, difficult to work perhaps. More difficult than if they were flat, clearly.
We are used to it. Of course, they are more difficult to work. We also have another handicap that people in Bierzo have to deal with. There are not big vineyards, there are not flat terrains, there are not large plots. We are talking about a basin of about 3,000 square kilometers. There is not possibility for growth.
What is the composition of this soil?
The soil, there are different types in Bierzo. In the lower areas we find soils with a larger presence of clay. Something that picks up the attention of the visitor is that they are of a red color tone. Why? Because these are acid soils that, differentially from the rest of Spain, have a large iron content. The acidity, together with the high iron levels, make them look reddish. Indeed, we can think of Las Medulas, the Roman gold mines, which is a world heritage. They are red clay. But this is what happens. As you keep moving up the hill, the clay disappears, and soils become rocky, where you can find slate.
This is a slate, right?
This is schist. This is a type of slate that you can completely exfoliate. The first thing that you will find with this soil typology is that they are not very deep, and the roots will not go too far down before finding the rock. This results in a lower vigor in the plant and a higher concentration in the must, and on the other hand, it provides minerality and freshness, because underneath the slate, the soil stores humidity.
Viticulture in Bierzo is peculiar as the climate is unique to this region and has forced viticulturists over centuries to develop their own methods to get the best out of their vines. Perhaps the main characteristic describing viticulture in Bierzo is the fact that its vineyards are characterized by a high fragmentation of parcels into small plots. On top of that, many vineyards are on slopes from 450 to 800 meters of elevation, oriented towards the 4 cardinal points, each requiring slightly different approach and not easy to access. Let's talk to the locals about this.
You practice a very traditional viticulture. Indeed, you recover old vineyards and you work them in the most traditional way. We are in one of them. This vineyard, I don't know how old it is, but close to 100 years old or more.
A little older.
You have another one over there, which is very representative as well. A very old vineyard that you have recovered. We come from a millenary history. Wine has been made here for 2,000 years, starting with the Celts, then the Romans and all the Middle Ages, and more recently the families. But the exodus of population towards the large metropolises left this all alone, and the massification viticulture replaces the traditional one with more use of chemicals. What do you have to do to recover these vineyards? Do you need lots of efforts and years to recover them to their original state?
I analyse the soil. I do it chemically and physically. Not only from the point of view of the laboratory, but also according to the vegetation that I leave in the vineyard. Biodiversity is important. I count the plants. Only when I recover 100 different species in a vineyard, I consider that I have achieved the level of biodiversity intrinsic to the area. It is understood that the cover crops increase biodiversity, avoiding plagues, and with a couple of actions per year, it's enough to control the vegetation and to achieve a positive competition between species. It is also true that in very dry years, the cover crop competes for water with the vine. My parameters are, when I harvest, whether I prune the vine shorter or larger. If this is Palomino and that over there is Esteladina and the next is Mencia. I do it all myself, and I do it as I was a tailor. Custom made versus prêt-à-porter.
In terms of viticulture, this is a perfect example of a vineyard how it used to be in the past, as it is an old vineyard with bunch vines. It was like this and you cannot change it. And behind you we see a trellised vineyard, more common to the modern times as it is easier to work.
That is correct. In the past, all vineyards were trained in bunches. These are centenary vines. We have vines more than 100 years old. And then the process has become more expensive and is very labor intensive. We have moved into trellising systems as it allows mechanization of the work and is more efficient economically.
We do everything manually. Manual pruning. The green pruning is also done by hand. It is a very particular viticulture. As we discussed before, Bierzo has a unique personality that is mainly imposed by the orography. Here we have one orientation, but if we go to the vineyard down there, the orientation is different and the soil composition is different. This imposes a very personalized viticulture, tailor-made for each plot of vines. For example, we are here in the Paraje San Martín with a wide variety Godello, and if we go down there to the Paraje Reidal, which is also Godello, and there are not more than 100 meters of separation, the date of harvest can differ by 10 days. Here the cryptogamic diseases are common: mildews, black rock. All these fungal diseases are always a concern.
Can you be ecologic?
We can be ecologic.
Do you have the certificate?
Yes, we were certified in 2003.
In all your vineyards?
In 100% of our vineyards. For me, it would not make any sense to have one vineyard certified and the other not.
Then the cover crop. You were telling me before that it helps to get yeasts for the spontaneous fermentation easier than if you did not have the cover crop.
Yes, there is more richness. In the end, in a soil where cover crops are growing, you have more biodiversity, more bugs that compete against each other, and richer yeast strains to ferment the must. This leads to more concentrated musts. It's all more fulfilling. In the end, The ecologic certificate is offering the consumer the assurance that things have been well done. We try to intervene with the growing of the plant the least possible, so that the plant can create its own defense mechanisms to be better prepared to combat fungus and other diseases. This will let us achieve fruit with more intensity of aromas and flavors. As we discussed before, we are in a transition zone where we have substantial rainfall, usually above 700 millimeters per year in average, and the vine diseases, which are mainly fungal, are always chasing you. You will always have spore generation. In viticulture, the products that we can use are way less persistent than in traditional agriculture. You need to learn how to play with time and make the least possible number of treatments while guaranteeing the health of the plant to harvest the best possible fruit.
Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go.
Mencía is the star grape of Bierzo. It's taking the international stage alongside its more widely known red grape counterparts, including Garnacha, which is known here as Alicante Boucher or Garnacha Tintorera. Mencía wines in Bierzo are elegant and expressive, with great potential for a long life in the bottle, and leading to wines favorably compared to the best Pinot Noir or Cabernet Franc of France. But very interesting white wines also thrive in Bierzo. They're made by similarly distinct grapes like Godello and Doña Blanca, and other better known as Palomino and Malvasia.
Your mind's got the key ingredients.
And the grapes, Mencía and Godello and...
Donda Blanca.
Doña Blanca is very specific from this area, right?
Mencía is autochthonous of Bierzo. It is very characteristic of Bierzo. It is in other DOS as well though. Godello is mainly found in Bierzo and Galicia. It's typical from here and is a very fresh and aromatic variety. We cultivate and harvest it for the elaboration of our Godello in particular.
Mencía is the black variety with the higher plantings in the denomination, where you find a larger genetic variability, where the planted area is larger and where it best adapts the grape Mencía is in Bierzo. You find the perfect conditions for Mencía because we have the perfect balance between sunlight and rainfall. If we go to Galicia, you get more water and less hours of sunlight, and you get wines that take a little longer to mature. Wines with more tension, electric, with nerve, and less mature, less fruity. If we move to the east into the province of Zamora, the balance swings towards more sunlight, and you get warmer wines, with a fuller body and powerful and with more weight. But above all, this is a variety that has a very specific time for harvest. If you miss that very specific optimal date, Mencía loses character very rapidly. Among the whole rainbow of varieties that we have authorized in Bierzo by the Regulatory Council, the Mencía is extremely well adapted to this area. Within this climate of transition, Mencía is the variety that better adapts and the one that gives the best results, and you have to practice a very dedicated viticulture for it. And then Godello, which during times where the emphasis was placed on productivity had been abandoned in favor of other varieties, as it is a very low productivity variety. It gives rise to really superb wines.
Winemaking has seen an explosion of modern approaches, with the arrival of intrepid winemakers to Bierzo during the last 2 decades. Bierzo wines are complex, floral, earthy, spicy, mineral, and exploding with multiple layers of complex aromas and flavors. This is best illustrated with classic Mencía-driven reds that revolve around finesse and complexity, ranging from subtle and fine wines reminiscent of the best Pinot Noirs to full-body and intense examples that resemble Cabernet Sauvignon. Lots of people make wine here for their own consumption, usually owners of the myriad of small vineyards spread around the region, a tradition passed down through generations. But we will visit those who make wines for commercialization, lucky for us, the consumers.
We have two main brands for our wines, the Noira for the Vinos de Villa and the Padorniña for our Vinos de Paraje. For the Vinos de Villa, we make a simpler elaboration, so to speak. One with Mencía with a crianza in wood for only 4 months, respecting the fruit, making a friendly wine, agile and easy to drink. A wine without complications, a comfortable wine. And we also make a Godello with a short aging on its lees for a couple of months. That's with a starting brand. Then with the brand Padorniña as Vinos de Paraje, it carries the name of the vineyard. With these we make elaborations a little more delicate. The Godello ages on its lees for 12 months and direct bleeding without pressing, looking to preserve the character of the variety. And the Mencía with a crianza of 12 months in barrique. This crianza is made here, next to the vineyard.
This is the wine that you make by carbonic maceration, right? And you do it in a very peculiar way. I don't know if different from others, but it's your own style. Can you tell me?
We try not to intervene. We aim at providing the grape and wait for the grape to transform itself as expected from carbonic maceration. We don't crush the fruit. It gets in with a stem, 100% whole clusters. We basically use the whole grape. The only thing we do is wait for the magic to occur. The magic that occurs inside each berry. We want the grape to take all the landscape and varietal character and transform it into a wine fully fruit-driven.
And that the pulp absorbs the color from the skin.
Exactly. That it absorbs the color. That inside each berry a little bit of wine is created without intervening, by itself.
You would take the berry and you would be eating the wine.
Correct, it's like each berry acted as its own fermentation vessel.
But then you quickly take it out and press it, separate the mass from the skins and stems and continue the fermentation.
Yes, after the pulp has taken all it needs in the interior of each berry, when the magic is done and the fruit has become wine with real varietal character, and the terroir that has seen it grow, it becomes a very fruity wine. It becomes a very varietal wine that reminds you of the harvest.
This is what you call a wine that is born, not made.
Exactly.
Here is where you mature the reds, the Mencía, right? How does it go? How long?
It spends 12 months in the barrique, but this is a wine that is not qualified as Crianza, Reserva or Gran Reserva. What we do is very exhaustive periodic tastings to control the time evolution, to make sure that Mencía, the fruit of Mencía, always remains over the wood. For that, the wine stays 11, 12 or 13 months. In the barrique, it depends.
I have been told that in Bierzo, the standard classifications Crianza, Reserva and Gran Reserva are not used often. On the contrary, you base your classifications on terroir, right?
Yes, Bierzo is very advanced along those lines. We have Vinos de Villa, Vinos de Paraje and Pargos selected vineyards. As a matter of fact, we are developing a wine from a Pago, a Vino de Paraje, that we will put in the market in 1 or 2 years. It has gotten out of the barrique right now. We are about to bottle it, and it will need to mature for a while in the bottle. What we do, as I was telling you before, depends very much of the tastings. Depends on the time it needs, as each plot reacts to maturation in a different manner.
Do you use American oak?
No, only French oak. We are making study with acacia barriques, made up with wood of the acacia tree. We have been told that it respects the fruit better. We will see. But the rest is all French oak.
Nacho, not only your viticulture is traditional, but also the way to elaborate wines, a garagist.
You can call me that.
All small scale, 15,000 bottles of total production with lots of care, very traditional. Tell us how it works.
What we do here is to follow the principle of minimum intervention. Obviously, the wine does not make itself. You must be on top of it. But we need to avoid masking it as much as possible. How do we do it? By intervening the least when the grapes get in. We don't make any kind of adjustment or addition. We neither select yeast nor use commercial yeast. On top of that, we do micro-vinifications in deposits of 2,500 and 1,500 litres for each of the plots. Define the origin of each wine. We make very short micro-vinifications. We destem the grapes, although sometimes we add stems, but we don't crush the grapes. We want them as whole as possible, and I don't use any extra yeasts or additions of any kind. This is spontaneous. We make the wine as our grandparents did. We move it with our hands. The wine ferments for around 5 or 6 days, and quickly we bleed the wine and transfer it to the barrique.
Now we know what Bierzo is about. We know about the viticultural practices, the unique grapes, and the philosophy of the winemaking. We're left with the best part, drinking the wines, and why not, eating the food. We will taste some examples of the best wines made in this region and converse with their makers about their characteristics. Come with us. Well, I'm with Lucia Arias, who is the commercial director of Bodega Zodelia.
We have the first here, which is your John Godello.
Yes, let me explain. We will start with the Gardelia Godello. It is a 2021 Godello. It is 90% Godello and 10% Donna Blanca. We make a small coupage with Donna Blanca, only at 10% because it provides very interesting citric notes to the blend. It is not young as commonly understood, as it has a crianza on its lees for 5 months. It is a slightly more complex style than a young wine, and you can tell by the colour, which is a little more intense. Also on the nose, where we find complex notes, with patisserie aromas coming from lees. The nose is delicate. There are lots of white flowers. These aromas can also be found in the mouth, and it gives citric fruits as well. It is a fresh wine with good acidity, but also has stone fruit, perhaps that sweet sensation that you may feel, but you also find the bitter aftertaste from the variety.
Yeah, a bitter finish, but it is alive, it has tension.
That's thanks to the aging on lees. We now will try the Gardelia Rosé. This is a very delicate rosé style.
It looks like a rose petal.
On the nose, it is very floral and very delicate. However, in the palate, it has the structure that comes from the variety that is made from Mathia. We know that Mathia provides structure to the wine. It has acidity, it has body, and this is what we can feel in this rosé. This rosé wine is practically like a white wine, a summer red, using the best meaning of Versailles. This rosé is very versatile, as it pairs very well with a wide range of dishes. We have culinary rainbow that goes from fish to meat. To finish our tasting today, we will try our Gardelia Mathia. It is a red wine from the 2016 vintage. It comes from a very old vineyard. It ranges from 60 to 80 years of age. We classify it as a landscape wine because it reflects well with the terroir that it comes from. We have slate, we have clay, all reflected in the wine. It has a very fruity nose because we want to preserve the characteristics of the variety. It has some wood, as you may feel. You get those toasty notes in the nose. We only use French oak barricades of 400 litres and fine grain, so the expression of the wood is very delicate. We don't want to overpower our wines with wood, just for them to gain some complexity and to help soften the tannins.
I have already tasted it.
I have talked too much.
You're right, I feel the wood, but...
It is very integrated.
And it is still very alive.
It has good acidity. We are talking about a 2016 and it has a long way to go. It is still very alive and still has room for improving and aging more.
Fantastic, the three wines.
We finish with a toast.
Salud and thank you very much. Nacho, we start tasting your mencías. This is your pijama, your base wine. Tell me about it.
For me, this wine smells and tastes of Bierzo. It is a wine that comes from all our vineyards. We elaborate the different parajes separately and then we assemble a final blend. Two strong points about this wine. Number one, it's very representative of the area. It is a textbook mencía of Bierzo, very characteristic. Number two, and I guess you will feel it, it is super easy to drink. Fresh, light, attractive.
I can smell the fruit, lots of fruit and freshness.
And then this expression that some critics perceive as negative is that the wine is easy to drink. Wine is a drink and needs to be easy to drink. Sometimes, when we look for lots of complexity, we end up with a wine that's difficult to drink.
Some people, they call them agile wines, but I'm in agreement with you. Easy is easy to drink, which is a plus.
Many times, what is easy in music, in mechanics, in physics is the best and ends up being complex.
Yes, definitively it's fruity and acid. It has tension and a good mouth.
It is a 2020 vintage. It was pretty warm and we thought we were going to have very Mediterranean wines. But it has not been like that. They have evolved very well. They show strong tannins, but are very polished, with interesting notes.
This wine can last for many years. It can still improve. Demencia. This is the highest of the rank.
According to the new classification, this would be a Vino de Via, as all the vineyards are in Villafranca del Bierzo. But, as I told you before, we are not far into it yet. These are vineyards that I've been working in since 2006.
Those centenary-old vineyards that you have shown us before.
These are very qualified to produce wines for aging and long life. That vintage had the spring and summer very fresh. We did not have that much rain. We didn't have much heat. With these conditions, the mencía becomes very Atlantic and very fine in the mouth.
This is what I find in the more elaborated mencía wines, that they remind me of Pinot Noir, perhaps Cabernet Franc. More like Cabernet Franc but without the green notes.
Perhaps less rustic. The equilibrium in wine is set by a proper balance between acidity, alcohol and tannins. But in these wines of high standing, so to speak, what we are looking for is quality. The tannins, as you can see, are very ripe. They are present. You can tell it will age well. But it's a tender tannin, not astringent or green.
No, definitively. I also pay lots of attention to the intensity and complexity of flavors. With the wine in the mouth, once analyzed the structural parameters, I like it to be intense, with complexity, with lots of different notes.
Yes, the bouquet. I believe that this comes directly from the vineyard. When talking about very old vineyards, you don't have much to add during the elaboration.
Outstanding and excellent wine. This is the wine that you make by carbonic maceration. You change the label every year and use a plant.
It's a nice history. Bodegas Prada has a forest. We have planted an educational forest as a legacy for future generations. For this label of this wine, each year we use the leaf of a different tree species that we have in the forest. These are extremely aromatic wines. These are wines that go very well in summer times. They transmit honesty, absence of manipulation. A wine that transports you to the vineyard, to the variety. It fills the mouth, explodes like a bomb.
It looks like juice.
That's the best compliment we can make of this wine. It is a fruit bomb. That's it, fruit converted into wine. The objective for this wine is the fruit.
It's Mencía, right?
100% Mencía and ecologic.
Jose, now the Godello.
San Martin.
This has a bit of barrique. It is perhaps your most elaborated Godello.
Yes, this one comes from a singular vineyard from the Paraje San Martin, a really unique plot. We elaborate it in oak barrels. Very large oak barrels.
For how long?
For 12 months, including the fermentation, and then it stays in barrels for 12 months.
Fermenting for 12 months?
It is not fermenting for 12 months. It ferments and continues in the barrel for a whole year. And then it is transferred to the bottle, where it continues maturing for another 2 years. As we were discussing before, Godello is a variety for wines of aging.
It has those pasticcerie notes so nice that I like to find in white wines.
It fuses with those citric notes as well. You can feel the variety, the Godello. It also gets those notes that to me make me think of quince jam. It is fine in the mouth, but with a powerful entrance.
It enters with wood.
It enters with volume. It provides the sensation of volume, and it finishes with a bitter aftertaste of Godello. Godello is a variety that provides a finish with that bitter sensation that prolongs the wine. When it looks like vanishing, then the bitterness prolongs the feeling.
It reminds me a bit of Verdejo in the finish.
There is some similarity between Godello and Verdejo. However, the Godello is a variety much less glyceric than Verdejo. In my opinion, this is a better balanced grape in that sense. It's a little more longitudinal, I guess.
Jose, we're about to try your Picantal. Not from the bottle, but we will take it directly out of this barrique.
Exactly.
This is your top of the rank.
This is our top wine. It is now our 50th anniversary wine. This one comes from the Picantal vineyard. For this wine, we employ exclusively grapes from that plot. It varies from year to year, but they always undergo long crianzas where they spend over 14 months in the barriques.
And in the bottle?
And then into the bottle, at least for another 2 years for the wine to keep getting rounder, as this is a wine to illustrate the variety. It smells Mencía, with those blue notes of violets and red fruit. The wood provides that toasty note. But these are not corpulent wines. If you notice, the Mencía has a velvety tannin. It enters smoothly and it continues longitudinally as it travels in the palate. It is a wine that works longitudinally. And it comes back with retro nasal memories where we get back to those herbs and mint notes.
Alright, Jose, I'm very pleased. Thank you very much for the tasting and for showing us the vineyards and everything else.
Thank you.
Aurora, what did you bring to us?
Good evening. We bring the Botillo. The botillo is pork meat with bone, ribs, tongue and other parts. All of it dressed with garlic, salt and pepper, put inside the pork's stomach skin. It is slow cooked, and then it comes in portions, as you can see it here, with potatoes, cabbage, chickpeas and chorizo.
This potato is called...
Cacello. They're called cacellos.
Okay then, can you share me a bit to try it? Because it looks so good. I have been told that it is in a strong plate.
Yes, it is strong for an evening. A little piece of cabbage, a little potato, and then on top of it, a piece of chorizo.
In case we did not have enough with the botillo.
Don't forget the chickpeas. There you go, the complete dish.
I'm going to try it and tell you how it is. It is delicious. And we have here to accompany it, because we are in the Hotel of Prada, a Prada Selección, which is a Mencia, right?
100% Mencia.
Thank you, Aurora.
Thank you.
Guillermo, let's try your wines, which is the best part. So we start with your Tenora Godello.
Sure, let's go. This, as all our wines, is an ecologic wine.
It has a good color. It is not pale.
With this wine, we try to respect the variety, and when it ripens fully, it gets a golden color, good acidity. It waters our mouth, and it is a rounded wine. It does not have a short journey through the mouth.
Has its age on its list?
Yes, it had a crianza of 2 months. This is a white wine that will last several years in the bottle.
It has intensity, complexity, body and acidity. It can stay for 4 or 5 years in bottle easily.
No problem at all.
We're now going to try your white Vino de Paraje La Padorniña. But I have found some bottles from the 80s with the same name. Therefore, this is a wine from a paraje that you have not invented, and it has been here for many years. Can you tell me about these bottles?
These bottles were elaborated by the old cooperativa of Villafranca that disappeared. They chose Padorniña as the brand as it was one of the best vineyards of Villafranca for the elaboration of wine. What we have done is to recover those vineyards, and we now have the ownership of the land. And I have tried to reunite all of the plots to recover the brand name. As a result, the brand and the vineyards have been recovered. We are recovering the history from before the 80s, but with an advanced interpretation. It is now a land of ecologic wine, respecting the tradition.
It is like coming back to the past, but let me leave the past behind so that you can show me the present time in your white of Paraje.
This wine has seen a crianza on its lees for 8 months.
This has a finer nose than the previous one, and with more pastisserie notes.
Yes, a little more accentuated. It is also silky. And after the crianza on its lees, it spends 1 year in the bottle. It is a soft mouth. It waters your mouth and continues asking for more. The acidity and the alcohol are very well integrated. It does not have the high acidity of the previous one, but it has that acid point perfectly integrated with the rest.
It also has that bitter finish as well.
That bitter touch in the end is because Godello provides those bitter notes, similar to the Reineta apple.
It has a nice journey in the mouth. Starts like sweet, continues acid, and finishes bitter. Beautiful. Okay, Guillermo, let's start the tasting of your reds with the Mencia Tenora. Can you tell me about it?
This wine comes from the plot, where we are. On the nose, lots of fruit, red fruits. Not particularly intense in the mouth, but with good acidity and an elegant journey, a fine touch of wood, not very persistent. with good glycerol and fresh.
A wine perfect for some tapas with friends. The last one is your more elaborated Mencía. We have it here and also inside there. But we cannot taste that one yet, as it is still in the making. But this one is finished. Tell me about it.
This is a 100% Mencía. Of course, this all comes from this vineyard. Specifically, it comes from the highest area of the vineyard. Where we have lower productivity, we are looking for an equilibrium between the fruit and the wood. It undergoes a crianza of 12 months. Here in the same land.
It has lots of complexity.
That's what we want.
This wine is outstanding. Savory, with good acidity, fills the mouth completely. It has fruit, with the wood gently accompanying it.
That point of tannins and what you have said, it has acidity that is going to prolong the life of the wine.
Alright, Guillermo, thank you very much. These are all excellent wines. Thanks for receiving us. Salud. Good luck in the future.
Thank you for coming.
We say goodbye to Castilla and León after having visited a really vibrant wine production area that can be described as different and exciting. We have been treated with love and appreciation, and we have been shown the marvelous products that Vitis Vinifera provides to visitors of this incredible area. The experience has been unforgettable.